One of the things we know as human beings is we are really bad at listening. And it's not because we want to be bad listeners. We're just not sort of built to listen. Now, one of the things we understand is when it comes down to our relationships, specifically people that we have had long history with or we're more close and connected with, we tend to fall into one of these buckets. We tend to fall into one of these modes of listening. And at the end of the day, the exercise in this is when we understand how we tend to listen to people, we just might be able to sort of jump in and sort of interrupt that and not allow ourselves to fall into the trap of what we call these three different types of listening modes. Now, this is specifically true when you are very close with this person. So think about your partner, your significant other, a very close friend, a family member. When we tend to listen and when they're sharing their stories, or let's say they're coming home and they're telling us a little bit about their life, a little bit about their job, a little bit about their relationship, and specifically maybe more from like they're challenged in a job or they're challenged in a relationship or they've got some difficult, stressful situations going on, we tend to listen to people through what we call the ears of judgment and criticism. Think about how many times maybe this has happened to you when you've been telling one of your stories or you've been sharing one of your challenges with a friend, and the first thing they tend to do is they tend to shoot you down, or they tend to sort of criticize your position or what your intentions were, what your decisions were, what your choices were. You know, at the end of the day, the worst thing about having this type of listening mode is people end up walking away feeling unheard. Now, the next type of listening mode isn't so bad. Isn't so much because we're trying to sort of, do this. At the end of the day, we just kind of fall into it. It becomes a sort of unconscious thing that we do, right? And this kind of goes generally across with people. We see this happening a lot in work where, we're interacting within a team or someone's bringing one of their challenges or scenarios up. And if we're not careful, what we end up doing is we jump into with what we call problem solving. Right now, this is kind of famous for guys, right? When it comes down to your relationships or your friends, buddy comes along and says, "Oh, I've got a problem," and the first thing you say is, "This is what you got to do," right? We see this happening a lot on the golf course as well. Right? Your buddy's about to take a swing, and the first thing you start to do is you start to say, "Hey, here's what you got to do. You got to give them some advice. You got to tell them what to do, tell them how to stand, tell them how to swing." And the joke about that is you could barely hit a golf ball as well. Now, one of the problems with this type of listening mode is we're not allowing people to actually finish because we tend to interrupt with problem solving. We tend to launch in with this sort of mode of problem solving. And for the coaches out there and for the enthusiasts out there that are eager to give people guidance and advice, you got to be super careful about listening through the ears of problem solving, because at the end of the day, problem solving feeds your ego. It can sort of feed into that narcissistic side of your personality. It feels good to give people advice. Whether it works or doesn't work, it still feels good. And it's like double reward when the advice actually did work. And at the end of the day, most people know how to figure out their problems if we give them enough time to talk it through without us jumping in. Now, again, this isn't that we shouldn't be doing these things. We should be aware when we're sort of overdoing it. Now, the final way we tend to listen to people, and this is sort of the third ear of how we tend to listen to people's stories. And again, this also very much applies to people that you're close with, friends and family and people that you're connected with, is we tend to listen to their stories or them telling us their challenges or sharing their woes with us through the ears of what we call minimizing. And what this does, unfortunately, is instead of helping them, it actually keeps them stuck. It actually keeps them in that sort of hole, because in our exercise to make them feel good, to try to take that pain away, to say things like, "Don't worry about it," or "You'll get a new job," or "That relationship wasn't meant for you," or "Thank God, this happened." At the end of the day, it doesn't actually help, and it doesn't make the person feel better. What it actually does is minimize their entire experience or their entire situation. So this is a little bit for the more of the nurturing type of personalities. Be super careful about launching in and saying things like, "Oh, don't worry, it'll be fine." Now, at the end of the day, one of the things about self-awareness is being able to catch ourselves when we're doing these things. So the exercise here is for you to think a little bit about what set of ears do you tend to listen to most people with? Or maybe there's certain people, certain relationships that you tend to sort of really listen to them through the ears of judgment. Or maybe you're also that dominant personality that kind of tends to fall into this default. At the end of the day, start to catch yourself, because you just might be able to receive a lot more, retain a lot more, and give the person the opportunity to actually feel heard.